السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم نور قلوبنا بمعرفتك واشرح صدورنا بنور كتابك وسنة نبيك واحفظنا عن زلل وخطأ في بيان مرادك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والتضحية فيها أفضل من التصدق بثمن الأضحية. Alright, we continue with the masla with regards to udhiyah. It is better to slaughter, more virtuous to slaughter the animal than to give charity of the price or the value of the animal. Right? So slaughtering animal is more virtuous than giving charity, monetary charity. لأنها تقع واجبة أو سنة وتصدق تطوع محض فتفضل عليه. Why? Because udhiyah is either wajib or sunnah. So depending on the ikhtilaf between the imam, either wajib or sunnah. وتصدق تطوع, whereas giving charity is an optional. تطوع is a nafil, it's optional. فتفضل عليه, so therefore something which is wajib and sunnah will have greater virtue than an action that is nafil. ولأن, that's the first thing, ولأن تفوت بفوات وقتها والصدقة تؤتى بها في الأوقات كلها. And secondly also because it is wavered or it falls away by the passing of its time, whereas sadaqah can be given at all times. فنزلت منزلة التواف والصلاة في حق الآفاق, so it will hold the same status as making tawaf, a virtue of tawaf over salah, in the rights or in regards to an afaki, a person who is not a resident of Makkah, Medina. You're coming to Makkah, so what's more virtuous for you? You don't stay there, so you're only going to get this opportunity 1 week, 2 week, 10 days, whatever, to be in the haram. So for such a person, tawaf has greater virtue than nafil salah. It's more virtuous to perform as much tawaf as possible for a visitor than to make more nafil salah. Understood that? Next masala. So now what happens is that time passes and the person hasn't made qurbani, then what? وَلَوْ لَمْ يُضَاحِي حَتَّى مَضَتْ أَيَّامُ النَّحَرِ, that if the person has not slaughtered the animal until the days of Nahar have passed, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. إن كان أوجب على نفسه أو كان فقيرا وقد اشترى أضحية تصدق بها حية. So they're saying in two scenarios, he has to give sadaqah of the animal live. If in كان أوجب على نفسه, if the person made it compulsory upon himself, he took an oath, for example, another. So regardless of whether he was rich or poor, he made it compulsory upon himself by taking another, that if I pass the exams, if I get this job, whatever, I will slaughter an animal. لله تعالى. أو كان فقيرا, or the person was poor meaning that he was not compulsory upon him, not wajib upon him, to make qurbani to begin with. But he bought the animal, and out of zeal, out of shock, he bought the animal because he also wanted to be part of the reward. So he bought the animal. تصدق بها حية, then he will give sadaqah of the animal alive. Right, even the poor person. وإن كان غنيا تصدق بقيمة شاة اشترى. Third scenario, if the person was a rich person and he bought the animal, rich meaning again, it was wajib upon him to begin with, then he will make sadaqah of the value of the animal. Ishtara aw lam yashtari, irrespective of whether he bought the animal or not. Okay?
Sure.
Now why the poor person? So he's saying لأنه واجب على الغني, because it is compulsory upon the ghani. And so therefore, he still has to continue and give, he still has to fulfill his duty. It's a compulsory duty upon the rich person. So therefore he has to fulfill that wajib, it doesn't fall away. It's not a wujub that falls away. In the case of
وده
the poor person, وتجب على الفقير بشراء, and it is compulsory upon the poor person because he purchased it بنية التضحية with the intention of making قرباني عندنا, according to us. So that's a reference to the masala that if you start a nafil, and if you start a nafil action according to the Ahnaf, it becomes compulsory for you to complete it. So you start 2 rakats nafil salah. Although it's nafil, it now becomes wajib on you by you starting it. If the salah breaks for whatever reason, it is wajib al-i'ada. You have to repeat it as a wujub. Same thing with the fast. If you started a nafil fast and the fast broke for whatever reason, it's wajib for you to make qada. Because according to the Ahnaf, once you start a nafil action, it now becomes obligatory. You have now made it a compulsory upon yourself. What's the ayah in the Quran? وَلَا تُطِيعُوا. No, I do not destroy your good action. Can't remember the Arabic now. Right. ولا تفسدوا. No. Right. So based upon that ayat, mentioned as before, if you start the nafil, it becomes wajib upon you. So that's why this poor person, by him purchasing the animal with the intention of slaughter, it being made a compulsory upon himself. فإذا فات الوقت يجب عليه تصدق إخراج له عن الأودة. So now when the time is expired, it is wajib and compulsory upon him to give away that amount in charity in order to remove himself from that responsibility. كالجمعة, just like Jum'ah Salah, تقضى بعد فواتي ظهرا, just like Jum'ah Salah, you have to make qada of it after the time expired as Zuhr. But Jum'ah itself falls away, but you have to go back, you have to revert back to the Asal Salah in that time, which is Zuhr Salah. أو الصوم وبعد العجز فدية, or like Sawm, understand? After you are incapable of, after you become incapable of doing it, then you have to give Salah fidya. Right? You have to pay it back. That's something you must. If you're now incapable of fasting, you have to give fidya for that must fast in order to that will be seen as a fulfillment of your wajib duty. So you understand that?
تمام.
Any questions?
نعم الحمد لله نسيبه.
Okay. Now we move on to the shurut with regards to the animal. What type of animals can't you slaughter? Now these are the extra shurut, which doesn't apply to the animals you slaughter throughout the year. I mentioned this before. So any animal you slaughter throughout the year for meat for the purpose of consumption, these rules won't apply. These shurut won't apply. ولا يضاحي بالعمياء والأوراق والأرجاء التي لا تمشي إلى المنسك إلا ولا الأجفاء. It is not permissible to slaughter a blind, completely blind animal. والأوراق, blind in one eye. Okay? والأرجاء, a animal that is lame or crippled. To what extent? التي لا تمشي إلى المنسك. It is crippled to the extent that it can't walk by itself to the place of slaughter. ولا الأجفاء, neither a very, very thin animal. A normal animal is called أجفاء when there's no marrow in the bone. So the animal becomes very, very thin. It becomes emaciated because it has some kind of illness that causes the marrow to deteriorate or to become less in the bone. بقول الصلاة والسلام لا تجزي ولا تجزي في الضحايا أربعة. There are 4 types of animals that will not suffice in the Qurbani animal. Al-awra, the blind, al-bayyinu, awra, whose blindness is obvious. Wal-arja, al-bayyinu arja, a crippled animal whose um, um, whose crippledness is clear, obvious. والمريضة والبين مرضها والأجفاء التي لا تنفي, and a sick animal, inanimal, whose illness is obvious or is clear. And what do you call this? Al-ajfa, the animal التي لا تنقي, that doesn't have any marrow. So a very thin animal that doesn't have bone marrow.
Okay.
قال ولا تجزي مقطوعة الأذن والذنب. And it also won't suffice to slaughter an animal whose tail, or whose ear and tail is cut off. Okay? Its tail or its ear has been cut off. Such an animal also won't suffice. Now, this has become a big issue in today's time, the tail story. Because most farmers nowadays, especially the white farmers, they dock the tail. And they cut off the tail and say for some health reason, whatever. They dock the tail. Okay? Um,
Okay.
so you just have to be careful. أما الأذن فلقول عليه الصلاة والسلام إش um, استشرفوا العين والأذن. The Nabi Sallallahu said, carefully inspect the eyes and the ears. أي اطلبوا سلامتهما. What does it mean carefully inspect? And look and check that it is intact, in order, healthy. وأما الذنب فلأنه عضو كامل مقصود فصار كالأذن. As regards the tail, because it's a complete lamb, مقصود, which is looked up, which is looked for, which is the purpose, and part of the purpose um, of sorting the animal. فصار كالأذن, so it will be like the ear. It will be like the ear. قال ولا التي ذهب أكثر أذنها وذنبها. That is an animal whose tail has been completely tucked, or whose ear has been completely cut, right? Or torn off for that matter. It was in an accident and got torn off. It was in a fight, whatever, got torn off. ولا التي ذهب, neither the animal, or most of the tail, or most of the ear is missing. وإن بقي أكثر الأذن والذنب جازة. If the majority of the tail or the ear is still intact, it will be masnah. Now the question is, what do you mean by most? What is most? Half, third, quarter, what? إذا لأن لأكثر حكم الكل بقاء وذهابا. Why? Because for the majority will be the ruling of the complete, of the whole. The majority will have the ruling, same ruling as the whole. Others we consider the majority to be in the hukum of the whole. بقاء, existent and non-existent. بقاء وذهابا, with existent or non-existent. Meaning, if most of it is existing, it will be considered to be the whole. If most of it is missing, it will consider to be as if the whole ear is missing. Okay, that's what you mean by baqa'an and dhahab, both existing and non-existing. Answer that?
Yeah.
ولأن العيب اليسير لا يمكن التحرز عنه. And also because some minor defect or some minor fault is not possible, completely possible to protect yourself or save yourself from it, because the animal, they're always running around, they're always jumping around and stuff. You're going to get some things along the way. You're going to get some kind of defect along the way. So some minor defect, it's not completely possible for a person to avoid that. فجعل عفوا, so therefore it has been waived, it's been made mouth. Now how much? واختلفت رواية أبي حنيفة رحمه الله في مثال أكثر. And the narrations from Imam Hanif رحمه الله with regards to the majority differs. ففي الجامع الصغير عنه وإن قطع من الذام والأذن أو العين أو الإلياء الثلث أو أقل أجزاء. In جامع الصغير في Imam Muhammad رحمه الله, it is mentioned that if from the tail, from the ear, or from the eye, and from the eye, or from the ulya, the rump. Rump is the back part, right? The back part. If one third is cut off, or or less, أجزاء, it will suffice. وإن كان أكثر, if it is more than one third, لم يجزي, then it won't suffice. لأن الثلث تنفذ في الوصية. Why one third? Because a wasiya is executed with regards to one third. A person has up to one third to make wasiya. So the Sharia considers one third in the case of wasiya to be a lot. So then one third of your money you can bequeath to whoever you want besides your heirs. Without the consent of the heirs. فاعتبر قليلا. So therefore, that is considered to be less or minor. وفيما زاد لا تنفذ إلا برضاهم. And whatever is more than one third, the wasiya is not executed except with the consent of the the consent of the heirs. فاعتبر كثيرا, so therefore more than one third will be considered to be a lot or a major part. ويروى عنه الربع. It has also been narrated from Imam Hanif رحمه الله a quarter. لأنه يحكي حكاية الكمال على ما مر في الصلاة. Why? Because يحكي حكاية the فعل is the rule. Because one quarter informs us, conveys to us kamal, conveys to us perfection. Understand? Or yeah. على ما مر as it really has passed in Kitab al-Salah. For example, one quarter of the head is masah, and one quarter of the masah is sufficient. Okay, so that's why quarter plays in certain masah, quarter plays a big role. ويروى الثلث لقول عليه الصلاة والسلام في حديثه الوصية الثلث والثلث كثير. And also one third, as already been mentioned, is also been narrated from Imam Hanif because of the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam with regards to the wasiyah, with regards to the what do you call this? The bequest, bequest. Thuluth, one third, Thuluth Kathir, when he was asked how much, and he says, Thuluth, then one third, Thuluth Kathir, and one third is a lot. وقال أبو يوسف محمد رحمه الله إذا بقي أكثر من النصف فجزاء. And Sahibain say if more than a half is remaining, then that will suffice. You can solve such an animal. اعتبارا للحقيقة على ما تقدم في الصلاة. Taking into consideration the reality as it is passed in Salah, among the shurut of Salah. وهو اختيار فقيه أبو الليل. And this is also the choice or the preference of فقيه أبو الليل رحمة الله عليه. Okay, understand?
Sure.
وقال أبو يوسف أخبرت بقول أبا حنيفة فقال قولي وقولك. That I informed Imam Abu Hanifa with regards to my opinion in this matter. And Abu Hanifa responded by saying, my opinion is your opinion. And then there's two interpretations of this. What does Imam Sab mean by this? كلا هو رجوع منه إلى قول أبي يوسف. Some say that this Imam Sab retracted his former opinion of one third and a quarter to the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. Others he agreed with Imam Abu Yusuf with regards to the half. وكلا معناه قولي قريب من قولك. And I said, however, some others said, no, the interpretation of this is that my opinion is close to your opinion. وفي كون النصف مانعا روايتان عنهما. And with regards to half being a preventative, meaning not being permissible to slaughter, there are two narrations from Sahibain. كما في انكشاف الأذن عن أبي يوسف. Like how there exists a different opinion with regards to exposing the limb in Salah from Imam Abu Yusuf رحمه الله. ثم معرفة المقدار في غير العين متيسر. Okay? Then coming to know the amount, because the question is, okay, how do you know whether the person, the sheep is half blind or whatever? So now how are you going to work that out? They say with regards to other limbs other than the eyes, easy. You can see half the ear is cut off, half the tail and so forth. It's not a problem there. So it's easy to judge whether it's half or less, whatever, so depending on the study code. Follow?
Sure.
The difficulty comes in the eye. How are you going to see whether it's half blind or not? Or whether it's either that the bad eye is very blind or completely blind or not. Or if it qalu, so they're saying the method of working it out is tashuddu al-ayn ma'iba, that you will shut the problematic eye. The eye that you suspect is the problematic, you'll close that eye. بعد أن لا تعترف الشاة يوما أو يومين, after having not fed the goat or the sheep for 1 or 2 days. Otherwise, you must not feed him until he gets hungry, until you now so sure that the animal is hungry. Okay, 1 or 2 days should do. Then you close the eye. ثم يقرب الألف إليها قليلا قليلا. Then you will take some fodder and you bring it closer bit by bit to the animal. فإذا رأته من موضع أعلم على ذلك مكان. Now when you see that the animal can see the fodder is coming towards it, then So you take the fodder, bring it closer, see with the response. Can it as the seen it, is not seen it, whatever. And slowly, as you bring it closer and closer, the place where it comes forward now to come and eat, you'll mark that spot. Okay, remember to look at the good eye now, eh? So you mark that
Okay.
spot. ثم تشد عينها الصحيحة أو تشد. Thereafter you close the good eye. And again وقرب إليها الألف وقرب إليها الألف قليلا قليلا. And then again the same thing. You bring the fodder closer bit by bit. حتى إذا رأته من مكان أعلم عليه. Until it starts coming for the fodder, sees the fodder and comes forward to eat. And you mark that spot. And so you got the spot marked for the good eye, and you got the spot marked for the bad eye. ثم ينظر إلى التفاوت ما بينهم. Now you look at the discrepancy. What's the difference between when it first noticed the food from the good eye and the place where it first noticed the fodder or the food from the bad eye? فإن كان ثلثا فالذهب الثلث. If it is 2/3, then we know that this eye is 1/3 gone. وإن كان نصفا, and if it's if the difference is a half, then we know that half the eye is blind. Follow?
Okay.
Any questions? Anything you didn't understand?
No, I'm understood, man.
ويجوز أن يضحي بالجماع وهي التي لا قرن لها لأن القرن لا يتألق به مقصود وكذا مكسورة القرن لما قلنا. And it is permissible to slaughter a jama. What is jama is explaining is that animal which is hornless, doesn't have any horn. Why? لأن القرن, because the horns has no purpose attached to it. Otherwise, the horn is not something that is sought after as such. The similar masala applying in this jais. If the horn has been broken off also. So whether it's hornless or whether it's been broken off doesn't matter. For the same reason we just explained. While khasi, and no problem slaughtering an animal which has been castrated, لأن لحم أطيب, because its meat is more tender. وقد صحح أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ضحى بكبشين أملحين مرجوعين. And it has been reported correctly from the Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم that he slaughtered 2 goats أملحين that had stripes of black and white, موجوعين, that were castrated. Okay.
Okay.
وثولة وهي المجنونة. And similarly, you can slaughter an animal that is insane mad. وهي المجنونة. كلا هذا إذا كانت تعتلف. This is if it's eating by itself. لأنه لا يخل بالمقصود, because in this case it will not interfere with the purpose of the slaughtering. أما إذا كان لا تعتلف, that يجزي. However, if it is not eating by itself, unable to eat by itself, then it will not suffice. Understood?
Okay.
Any questions? Anything you didn't understand?
I'm understood, man.
Okay, well, stop there. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.